Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Thanks for tuning us in again. This is B&B Hockey Talk. I'm Aaron Bloxel with my co-host Matthew Balzer, and we got a incredible show for you once again today. Today is Thursday, not Tuesday. It's Thursday, July the 26th, and right after we ended the show yesterday, stunning news coming out of Vancouver with President of Hockey Operations Trevor Linden stepping down. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over a couple of minor signings that happened today. And we're going to go over our 31 teams in 31 days with the Los Angeles Kings and some intriguing pieces there like Ilya Kovalchuk. So listen in. Tell us what you like. Hit the like button. Hit the share button. Comment. Maybe give us some Trevor Linden feelings on what happened with the Vancouver. Share with us about the Los Angeles Kings if you want, but let's get into that. Matthew, how are you doing today? You ready to talk Trevor Linden?
Oh yeah, big news. But nothing like the late July to just fire your president.
Did they fire him though? I don't think he officially got fired.
Well, technically not, because they want to save face with Linden. But yeah, I think that there was a big disagreement between him and Aquilini.
Yeah, I think from what we're hearing, the reports are they weren't seeing eye to eye. Linden decided to part ways. I'm sure, like you said, it was probably mutual. And Jim Benning, Travis Green talking today about how that position doesn't look like it's going to be filled anytime soon, or if at all. Might all rest on Jim Benning's shoulders. It wasn't from a lack of where the team is going, because they're definitely going in the right direction finally. But I said it once before, and I'll say it again. I believe the ownership here in Vancouver needs to take their hands off and let the people they've hired do their job, right? There's always rumors that they're meddling with certain contracts or people or direction of where the team's going, and it is definitely frustrating as a Canucks fan. But do you think this is a move that reflects Trevor Linden at all, and maybe discuss kind of his tenure here over the last 4 years with this rebuild?
Yeah, like this won't affect Linden's reputation in Vancouver at all. I think that this is all on Aquilini and their relationship. It's such a frustrating thing as a Canucks fan. It's just like you hear their comments, like Aquilini says, it's like he's not meddling. It's just like he's letting their guys do their job. They have a long-term plan and stuff. And then you see guys like they go out and sign Roussel, Beagle to these long-term contracts, like, and even Gagne and Del Zotto to like 3-year deals and stuff. And it's just like, what are you doing? It's like I know you have to have like some placeholders when the young guys aren't still ready to get into the NHL, but there's been so many mixed messages from upper management. It's like sometimes it's just like, okay, we want to win now. It's like we're gonna bring some guys and slowly bring in the young guys along. But as you see in most NHL teams, if you do that, you're just stuck in the middle. Like the Calgary Flames were for many years before they moved on from Kiprusoff. Again, they were like in that 10th, 11th place year after year until they finally decided to blow it up. And even like the best thing right now is with Winnipeg going through the draft. It took many years. Like Scheifele was drafted in 2011, and now he's finally just starting to become like a superstar center. And along with, you have to get some wins in that first round, because if you look at all the guys in the first round, they've gotten Scheifele, Morrissey, Trouba, it goes on and on. It's like you got to have these home run picks every year. And for Winnipeg, I think they're the main example, and even with Toronto as well, developing young guys and going through the draft. But I think with Aquilini, everything's about winning now and making sure he's getting all his money that he can. It is frustrating as a Canuck fan. It's just like they say one, as I said, like we want to go in this direction, but it seems like they're going in another direction. But yeah, it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, and for me, Francesco Aquilini was against the rebuild back when they hired Trevor Linden, and they publicly announced that. And I have a feeling that his hands were really all over this team. Linden's hands were tied, and he was just getting frustrated with it. The other thing, too, that I think they did is that perhaps even only hired Trevor Linden to help sell tickets, to bring back, the guy that everybody here loves. So it'll be interesting to see if they do, in fact, replace him and hire somebody eventually, or if they just, let it fall on Jim Benning's shoulders and let him continue to do the job. Because, 10 years ago, there wasn't such a thing as hockey operations and stuff like that, right? It was just the general manager. They did all the work. And now there's so many different jobs because of the salary cap. There's so many different coaches and jobs in upper management to help develop a team now. Because if you can't spend the money on players, you might as well spend it on other resources, right? So, my thoughts on Trevor Linden and his tenure was, I think he wanted to do the right thing here. I think he wanted to break it down, but his hands were just too tied, and he probably had to ask permission to do certain things, and my feeling is he got shut down every time he wanted to continue to go younger. So the one thing I did like about Trevor Linden is his loyalty to Daniel and Henrik Sedin, and those guys, their numbers are going to be retired, I'm pretty sure, fairly soon with the Canuck organization. So final thoughts on Trevor Linden, and let's get into a couple of the signings today, and then we'll jump into the Los Angeles Kings team preview.
Yeah, and the other thing as a Canuck fan, with the Benning and Green press conference that they had on Sportsnet 650 today, is that Benning and Green, they don't know what's going on. It's just like Linden being above them. It's just like they say it's like, we didn't see any problems or anything. And literally all we got was a 12-thread tweet from Francesco Aquilini on Twitter. And that was it. Like, where was Aquilini at this press conference? Because he's about the only guy, either him or Linden, that can actually explain exactly what went on. So, yeah, as a Canuck fan, it's pretty frustrating when it's like you want to see what your owner is doing, and you want to hear from himself what exactly happened. But, yeah, and it looks like with Benning just taking over, I think there were a couple names that could be thrown out for team president. I think Jason Botchford, in his story that he wrote yesterday, mentioned Chris Pronger as a potential candidate. Right now, he's a senior advisor with the Florida Panthers, and before that, he was the head of player safety. Before that, so it's sort of like the Brendan Shanahan with Toronto.
Chris Pronger finally stopped getting paid as a player.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other person that was thrown out there was Dean Lombardi, who I believe is with the Philadelphia Flyers organization right now, but he helped build the Los Angeles Kings up to where they won the 2 Stanley Cups in his tenure before he left.
Interesting. So let's get into today's couple of signings that happened, and then start us off with the forwards for Los Angeles.
All right, so just 2 minor signings for backup goalies. Calgary signed goalie David Rittich to a 1-year, $800K deal. He'll be battling out the backup spot between John Gillies and himself for that backup job. And then the Pittsburgh Penguins re-signed Tristan Jarry to a 2-year deal worth $275K a year. He will also be battling out for the backup job with Casey DeSmith. But I think Jarry should win out on that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Getting into the Los Angeles Kings forwards, the big signing, Ilya Kovalchuk out of the KHL. Anze Kopitar, who had a great bounce-back year and was a finalist for the Hart Trophy, had 92 points last year, and I think and goals-wise he had 35, which was a huge improvement from last year when he started off with that $10 million contract a year. So, and another guy that bounced back, Dustin Brown, he had 61 points last year, coming off of like 30-something points the year before. So that's a huge improvement for Brown. Even though it's as a Canuck fan, I could have little to no respect for Dustin Brown. Second line is the all 70s line: Tanner Pearson, Jeff Carter, and Tyler Toffoli. Carter was injured for basically all the entire year, which was a huge loss for the Kings. But with him being healthy, Pearson and Toffoli struggled at times last year, and with him healthy, those guys should have bounce back years. The third line I was Alex Ifialo, Adrian Kempe, and Trevor Lewis. Kempe, a first-round pick from a few years ago, actually had a pretty good breakout year with 16 goals and 37 points last year. And the fourth line, I was Kyle Clifford, Nate Thompson, and Johnny Brodzinski. Thompson, they brought in the trade from Ottawa and should provide some center depth. And Brodzinski is an intriguing name. He's been up and down from the minors to the big club. He's been about a point-a-game player in the American League over the past few years, but still hasn't gotten a breakout season yet in the NHL. And the extra fours I have is Michael Amadio and Zach Mitchell. They'll provide a little bit more depth.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm excited to see a full season out of Jeff Carter, only because I know he brings a lot of heart and soul to that that center ice position on the Los Angeles Kings. Both, you're absolutely right. Tanner Pearson and Tyler Toffoli both struggled last season without having a consistent centerman. And the other one is obviously Ilya Kovalchuk. Is he going to pop in 20, 30, maybe even 40 goals this year? Like, I'm really interested to see what he does. And can Dustin Brown and Anze Kopitar have another consistent year? Right? Are they going to have a repeat of last year, or are they going to go back to the season before where they struggled? So it'll be interesting to see for sure. But those top two lines definitely very good and lethal offensively, hopefully, because the Los Angeles Kings the last 5-10 years have really struggled offensively when it comes to scoring goals. But let's talk about their defense. So I've got Jake Muzzin, Drew Doughty, who's still one of the league's very, very best. I mean, he's consistent all year round. We've got Dion Phaneuf, Derek Forbert, who provide a really solid they provide some solid minutes. They're very good at playing against other teams' top lines. And then I think it's going to be Oscar Fantenberg with Alex Martinez. And Fantenberg stepped in late last season and did a good job. We'll see where he's at. There's another prospect, which we'll get into, that I think will also have a shot at that spot. And then they've got some depth defense in Daniel Brinkley and Curtis McDermott. So they've definitely got some decent depth there. They've got a lot of experience, especially in their top five. And, even though they're one of the lowest scoring teams, they're also one of the hardest teams to score against. So why don't you touch on your thoughts on their defense, and then let's get into their goaltending.
Yeah, so Jake Muzzin and Drew Doughty, I think, is one of the best top pairings in the NHL. Muzzin's really come out over the past couple of years and has even played for Team Canada at that World Cup, I believe. And with him and Drew Doughty's chemistry is really good. Phaneuf, we'll see how things go. He still is a pretty good defenseman, but with the money that he makes, he isn't that good. It's sort of crazy to think, like, from his rookie year where he had like 20 goals and stuff, like that he was going to be like this huge superstar defenseman, and then he sort of settled into like that 30, 35 point defenseman that can still be a pretty physical guy. And then Martinez, I think the Kings are hoping that he can have a bounce back year offensively. He only had 25 points last year, and I think the year before he was pushing around 40 points. So I think they'll be hoping for a bounce back year from him.
Stanley Cup winning goal too a few years ago.
All right. Getting into their goalies, one of the best goalies in the NHL, and he won the Jennings Trophy for the least amount of goals let in the entire NHL, Jonathan Quick. How this guy can do the splits and for like forever when plays go on scrambles is still baffles me. But yeah, he should be up for the Vezina Trophy this year. Just the way that he plays and the way the Kings defensively play it is really good for his style. Backup goalie-wise should be rookie Jack Campbell, who was a first-round pick for the Dallas Stars many, many years ago in 2010, I believe. Yes, 2010. And he finally got the backup job when they moved out Darcy Kemper to Arizona. They brought him up towards the end of the year, and he played quite well. Only getting into a few games, but he played really well. And then they brought back Peter Budaj in a trade in the offseason with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he'll be a veteran goalie. If Campbell does struggle and they need a veteran presence to come up, they'll use him.
Yeah, and if you want to know how good their goaltending is, just look back at last year's first-round playoff matchup between the Los Angeles Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights. That goaltending duo was unbelievable between Marc-Andre Fleury and Jonathan Quick. There was what did Vegas ended up winning the series in 4 straight, but they only scored like 6 or 7 goals. I think it was 7 goals total. Like, it was unbelievable the way those 2 goalies made save after save. And he also provides a chance for them to win each and every night. So the Los Angeles Kings definitely looking good. How about let's get into some of their future players. There might be a couple pushing for spots this year, but some of them will still need some seasoning. We'll get right into it with their first-round draft pick from 2017, Gabriel Velarde, or Gabe Velarde as a lot of people call him, played for Kingston last year. Ended up playing only 32 games, but had 58 points. He's known as an offensive player, probably still 1 year away. And I believe, when he does make this team, he'll be a second or third line center behind Kopitar, but they'll definitely brand him as the center of the future. This year, they also drafted a centerman, Rasmus Kupari. He played in the Finnish Elite League in the Liga last year, 39 games, 14 points. Still very young, though, just barely 18 years old. Again, he's going to be pretty flashy, but he's definitely a couple years away. Now, one of the players I think that is going to crack this lineup that has had a little bit of experience, he played 12 games last year, is defenseman Paul Ledoux. In those 12 games with the Kings before the playoffs, he had 4 points. And during the regular season in the AHL with the Ontario Reign, their farm team, he ended up having 18 points in 36 games. Another defense prospect that they have is Cale Clegg. He was a second-round pick in 2016. Split his time between Brandon and Moose Jaw last year. Had 71 points for a defenseman in only 54 games. Another guy that could potentially run their power play, but is still probably a couple years away. Well, let's jump back to the forward position. My last prospect that I got on my list before you get into yours is their second-round pick from 2017. His name is Jarrett Anderson Dolan. He's going to play this year in Ontario for the Reign. He played last year in Spokane and had 91 points in 70 games. An offensive threat, but a little undersized. They still have a little bit of development to do with him. But he is signed under contract and will play in Ontario this year unless he has a great camp and somehow makes this roster. I'll leave the goaltender prospect to you as well as a few that you've got.
All right, yeah. So their big goalie prospect is Cal Peterson, who was a 5th-round pick for Buffalo in 2013, but they were never able to get a contract with him, so LA was lucky enough to sign him as a college free agent. His rookie year was actually really good in Ontario. He had went 23, 14, and 2 in 41 games with a 91 save percentage and 4 shutouts. So first year being in the American League, that's really good numbers, and potentially in a year or two could be pushing for the backup spot over Jack Campbell. Cale Clegg, who you brought up earlier, I'm really high on. I think he paired with Connor Timmins for Canada at the World Juniors with their top pairing. And between him and Makar, got a lot of power play time. And he should, in a year or two, should be in the NHL, I believe. A couple other guys that I have is Sheldon Rempel, college free agent that they signed towards the end of the year. Yeah, he had 23 goals and 46 points in the NCAA last year, and could be potentially pushing for a roster spot, being 22, 23 years old. And Michael Amadio, who we brought up under the depth for forwards, he had 35 points in 32 games in the American League, and he got into 37 games in the NHL this year and had 4 goals and 8 points. Could potentially get into the lineup between him and Alex Ifialo. That's a last name. I won't be able to for a spot in that bottom 6 between those two guys. Yeah, and then Daniel Brickley, who we brought up. Sorry for the pause. Had 35 points in 40 games in the NCAA, and was another big college signing. And he could potentially, between Fontenberg, Ledoux, and McDermott, could be pushing for that last spot. But I think he'll start down in Ontario this year.
So the Kings last year finished with 98 points. Were able to make the playoffs with the last wild card spot. Imagine 98 points is that cutoff to make the playoffs. Like that's a crazy season. Do you see them improving on that, staying the same, or falling down the standings this year?
Yeah, I have them in 3rd place in the Pacific, just behind Vegas and San Jose. I think it will be a rematch between Vegas and the Kings in the playoffs. Goaltending, it's like they had the best penalty kill in the league last year. So defensively, they're strong suited there. It will be goals that will be challenging. Bringing in Kovalchuk should be a huge improvement, depending on how his skating is and how good his scoring touch still is. But I think he should be good for at least 30 goals this year, playing along with Kopitar. But yeah, they're an intriguing team. They're getting up there a little bit in age, but with some youth coming in the future, I think they'll be able to stay competitive.
I find it funny that everybody is putting Vegas in their top of the Pacific Division now after that season. I actually think Vegas might fall a little bit because many teams, I think, really were underestimating them last year, even though they kept saying they weren't. I mean, think about it as an away team going into Vegas for a game and, being there for a day or two before your game. I don't think you're going to be in the greatest of mindset. And I really believe that people will take them a little bit more serious this year. I see the Kings staying around the same, but maybe falling a little bit point-wise. Kovalchuk can definitely help them offensively. And if their team defense stays consistent with the way it has been, even though I see them falling down a few points, I see them, fighting it out with San Jose and Vegas for potentially the lead in the Pacific Division. I really think there's going to be a lot of parity next year in the Pacific Division, and it'll be really interesting to see where they definitely fall. I think they do definitely have the edge over the other teams, though. Edmonton, Calgary, Anaheim, I think are all still not quite at the same level as Los Angeles. So I do see playoffs in their future. So anyways, that's our show for today on the Trevor Linden and the Los Angeles Kings. So make sure you like us. Make sure you tell people about us, share us, hit that like button. And once again, this is Aaron Bloxel with Matthew Balzer with B&B Hockey Talk. We'll be right back with you again tomorrow afternoon, bringing you another episode of our 31 teams in 31 days with the Minnesota Wild. So we will talk to you guys soon. Have a fantastic evening, and thanks for listening.